Hi, Gaurav. Thank you so much for joining our fireside chat that we do with founders and CEOs across digital native. And great to have you as part of this fireside chat. Broadly, Gaurav, I would like to first of all have a brief introduction of yours. Of course, everybody knows about TruKKer and you, but for the team members who are joining, uh, would like to have a brief introduction of yours, and also
Sure.
would like to have a starting kind of view from your side that trucker has come a kind of long way from marketplace beginnings to a full stack freight orchestration. So what is the underlying thesis that you have that connects the pieces from fleet to finance to tech to trade visibility, getting into one freight flywheel? So you can cover like on the platform aspects or monetization or ecosystem orchestration perspective. Would like to have your view on your vision for Trucker.
Sure. Very nice to meet you, Dharmender, and thanks for having me. Good morning to everybody else who's on the call. So, quick thing about me, I'm Gaurav. I'm a Bengali, born and brought up in Gujarat, primarily brought up in Ahmedabad. Civil engineer from first degree, then got a structural engineering master's. That's when I left for India to study in the UK. And then worked in real estate transaction advisory, picked up an MBA in between. Uh, and then have been in the region in Dubai, moved from London to Dubai in 2007 as one of the four development managers of the Atlantis, which was at that time the biggest hotel project that was under construction in the world. And was hardcore into real estate transaction advisory, consulting, development of mega projects. About Trucker, this was an accidental kind of event that happened in 2016 when I stumbled on the idea of Uber of trucks. I was 33 at the time and 34 at the time, and I was like, hey, listen, if I don't want to have 10 years later see somebody building Trucker and think that, hey, I could have been that guy because I got this idea in whatever 2016, 15, right? And there was some other pressure of, to move back to India from Dubai, ending my consulting life and join my family business. I'm the only child, had a very comfortable upbringing, lovely parents. So I was under pressure to do things in India. And then the Uber of trucks came as an idea, and we started Trucker with my childhood friend Pradeep. Pradeep is the main, brains, the technology, the techie guy, and the entire Trucker architecture is built by him. So I connected with him, and 2 months later we created Trucker. Now, to your other question, in terms of what is that trucker doing in terms of this what does this freight stack mean? We're the largest digital freight network across 9 countries right now, mainly in the GCC and then Turkey and Kazakhstan, operated by on the cloud with complete microservices as the network that we call. And this whole thing starts with, our objective. When we said Uber of trucks, it was very simple to say that, hey, we need an app where people can book trucks. The whole thing completely is a very different thing from building Uber. So when you are a passenger, getting in and out of a cab is 5 seconds. You want the cab right now. You don't have any documents to sign. You don't have a lot of complexities that happen in cargo. So we ended up building a very deep stack of data processing things which remove friction from an enterprise client who wants a service from an extremely fragmented supply which has very opaque systems, broker over broker, multiple handshakes and all of that. So over the years we built the system that one, it is pretty standardized. Anywhere sitting in, you can sit in Bangalore office in the control tower and you can check every truck that's moving on the network from Kazakhstan to Oman, including its commercial compliance, exactly what the client's SLAs are, how many points is the truck in terms of SLA matching, and it should be, primarily matching all the SLAs. And typically, if you again compare with Uber and Trucker, in like I've seen maximum of 7 or 8 different cab types. Maybe in California, they also have the autonomous ones. But most places I haven't seen more than 8 cab types being offered when you want to book Uber. In Trucker, typically the minimum truck types are 32. And if you then go into some of the complex movements of project-based cargo, then there can be like 40 truck types that can, that has to be filtered through by the system to match the client's requirements. So it's much more complex in that nature. I hope this helps in
No, that
giving
helps.
you some
That helps.
information. And then the whole financial transaction that flows between an enterprise, which pays you following their own payment processes and all of that, to a fragmented, sometimes a gig worker who wants his money as soon as he finishes doing his job. So there's a whole element of financial integration in this transaction that drives compliance, that drives data, that drives stickiness. Getting paid on time is a great stickiness in business. So I hope that answers your question and gives
No,
you.
that answers. That answers. So, Gaurav, thank you so much for sharing your introduction and the overall context. One major challenge that the urban travel versus the trucking travel is the cross-border enablement. So scaling across the geographies means you have to navigate from different infrastructures, compliance, career behavior, the carrier behavior. How do you kind of modularize your core services like route planning or payments so that it can be the trucker platform is accepted or adapted across the borders? Like you're saying that Oman to other countries, your trucks travel. So how do you ensure that? That's significant learning that we'd like to have from from in comparison to our the cab operators of Uber or any other.
So if you think of it, in simple terms, just to keep simple for the audience, if you think about any cross-border movement, when you're trying to send cargo from, as an individual, from India to the US or vice versa, you're trying to buy something from Amazon US and then, consuming it in India, you would immediately think about export-import, right? There's some kind of an export-import. So land freight is the same. I think as long as you are aware completely about these export-import norms in terms of crossing borders, and then it has an additional amount of complexity that you need to then bring cargo back. You don't want to get your trucks doing one way. The first rule of optimization is to maximize reverse loads or increase that density. So you need to then have the other trade barriers. Like every country has different barriers. Like, if a UAE truck is going from UAE to Saudi Arabia, it cannot do a domestic transaction in Saudi Arabia. It has to
Correct.
do another international transaction from back to the UAE. It can't do an international transaction from Saudi Arabia to Bahrain, for example, right? So a lot of these restrictions that come in, and I think that's one of the advantages of having a digital company. Like if I look at it as a non-tech guy, and a transportation operator, then if I don't want to have this as a learning to my people and discover this from transaction to transaction. So right now, the trucker network provides all of these SLAs, as part of its compliance. You cannot select a UAE driver to do a Saudi transaction. Same like you cannot select a box truck if the client wants a flatbed. So a lot of this, filtering, and this is what we call it, again in layman terms, is like attributes to every demand. That okay, this demand is from XYZ, and all of those attributes have to meet with the supply. Okay, all of these attributes are met by the supply to then have the matchmaking done.
Correct. Just one additional aspect I would like to understand on the payments part. So how your payments are because there are cross-border flow of the trucks. So the payments is required to be like the organization, the client ordering from one country to another. So how the payment settlement or ecosystem works? Is it have you made certain particular innovations or it's a standard banking arrangement that we do?
So payment becomes extremely important in terms of our supply. So, for example, on the supply side, the primary value add that the business does, it makes it very transparent for them to know what demands are available. So the same way a broker tells the client that, hey, trucks are short so that he can command a higher price, the broker tells the driver or the transporter that the demand is short so that he can reduce the price. So one is that transparency. They can see based on their truck type and attributes how many qualified loads are available. But the second one is no bullshit payment. So we negotiate quite hard. It's a reverse auction system that works. So we end up identifying the best price. But then we also promise, payment terms which are non-negotiable. So and the amounts have to be quite accurate, right? So we do not have typical challenges of not having change. And these are the things where until 2020 and also continued into 2022, where we had grown to about 20 plus payment centers across the GCC, where drivers who are compliant to get paid after completion, or drivers who are supposed to get paid in advance payment, they can visit a cash center and receive that payment upon presentation of the transaction details. Now, we have our own fintech called Moxie. Now, Moxie is into the payments infrastructure space. Right now, it is focused on mobility, and it is acquiring transporters and drivers to become their wallet of choice, where not only do they get paid instantly from TruKKer as the biggest broker in the market, but also get paid from other brokers. So Moxie offers this, and it's a completely different entity, even though the shareholders are the same, but it is a separate holdco with its own compliance, and those things are required in fintech being much more regulated, rightly so. But so Moxie offers that great advantage to truckers. So we do not have an enterprise account with Moxie, but we are able to integrate with Moxie. So all our transaction management within the trucker control tower has our own fintech, powering the smooth flow of money and its ledger.
No, absolutely. I think the best part that you told was the transparency of payments. That what is the amount that everybody is going to get is very clear and transparent and is processed as per the like strict payment terms. So just moving further on the tech part, have you leveraged in your automation any use cases of machine learning or AI, which is part of your operations, and whether it is delivering the ROI or the investment or any learnings of adoption of AI in this sector, that or you're still experimenting and ROI is yet to come. So any particular example if you'd like to share?
So listen, for me, the whole AI realization happened in December 2023. I think it took some time, and I think the world was already moving at a high speed at that time. That I realized that AI is going to disrupt, it's going to transform, and it's going to create a value in everything and for everyone, regardless. I would be disrupted as an individual decision maker on top of a business, to a consultant, to everybody. So that was December 2023.
Correct.
It was already, we had Python engineers doing machine learning and data scientists who were working on, predictive analysis and all of those things much before that. But then from 2023, I, as a non-techie, figured out that, hey, this is the transformation that's possible. And my first thing in my mind was, out of 450 or whatever, 450 plus people in TruKKer, nobody drives the truck. Everybody's processing data, communicating data, or taking decision based on another data, right? So I was like, hey, listen, this is truly revolutionizing, right? So now, 1.5 years, what we spent a lot of time in 2024 was we figured out very quickly that the communication, self-learning, and the data processing is commoditized. So we don't have to build that part, and that's the infrastructure builders putting in billions, maybe trillions of dollars over the next few years, right, into building that infrastructure. But the quality of that, where you're replacing all these people, like I said, people who are not doing as optimized work because they're human, they have to go for a smoke, they have to go to the bathroom, they can fall sick, they can forget, but it's done by humans. If you want to take that to be automated, then the data quality is extremely important. So what we did a lot of time in 2024 was aggressively, and we had the advantage because we're a digital company, everything is in digital form. Every kind of data point, every document that gets scanned for thousands of these transactions, we know exactly the contents and all of that. So we spent a lot of time last year in getting our data, AI ready. And then by the end of the year, out of multiple work streams, we selected 4 that we want to, work on in terms of creating convenience, saving money, or both. And then we've done, for example, I'll give you a small example of demand capture. So when a client wants a truck, he can do one of these things. He is integrated with our system. So his dispatch is integrated with our system, which is only restricted to advanced, sophisticated clients who do that. Then he can email us, or he can WhatsApp us. And the worst case, and very few clients now have that, is they might call somebody saying, hey, it has to be a contracted client, but they can call. Now we've already digitized all of that, and including WhatsApp. So now there's no reliance on the client, waiting for somebody in TruKKer to read an email or read his WhatsApp. or wait for the demand to be created through another inquiry that a human is creating because it received a call. So all of that is instant, and we've created that now to go into next stages where we can also prompt the client. "Hey, do you think you have this kind of demand to these lanes today? Do you want to just simply confirm rather than create?" So a lot of these, this is one bucket where we're making it easier for the client, not rely on any human intervention towards telling the platform, which instantly takes that demand and throws it out on the supply. Now, this you would think that, hey, this is the same thing in Uber. But yes, Uber is the same thing because every client can only order Uber through an app. I can't do that to an enterprise. They're like,
Right.
so I have to have these multi-channels. And now I think the next stage for us is to also make this omni-channel. By December, all these demand will be omni-channel, where you might be placing an order on WhatsApp, then checking the status on email, or calling saying, "Hey, what happened?" And the AI is integrated through all these multiple channels to give you one answer.
Right. So you're saying that communication interface, like omni-channel communication interface that you have implemented, that's good. But just
That's a very low-hanging fruit.
yes,
And if you now look into our, I said four buckets. The other buckets include like transaction management. Now, transaction management is where really the compliance thing comes in. Now, a lot of this compliance, the system tells, but it depends on the human to address or not address. And in a normal digital system, we get dashboards of non-compliance. But then the action is waiting for somebody to look at that dashboard of
right.
non-compliance, take an action. So we're going to digitize that. Sorry, the action is also going to be instant by the system. So no, don't report non-compliance. Address it now.
Yes. So like minimal human intervention, and particularly highlighting and not waiting for indefinitely for humans to respond. So got it. Just one aspect, like in the trucking segment, there are festive seasons, or there are seasons or seasonality, at least if I talk about the Indian context. So how you do the prediction of and the preparedness towards the seasonality in the festive season, or any particular season that you see as a surge in demand or a decline in demand, or any predictable model that you're building. So are you working on such predictable kind of behavior, and leveraging AI, and then adopting your internal systems accordingly? Have you?
So these kind of seasonalities and the ability to predict them, price them, I think the real ability is the ability to price them, because that's what clients want. B2B, especially medium to large size businesses, they don't depend on, like, in Uber, again, in passenger, you have surge pricing. You want to get your cab in peak hours, you pay more. Businesses don't like that because they've already sold their cargo and they would have fixed the transportation part of the shipment, right? So they like predictability and, platforms or business brokers who can fix that price for them. So the price, predictability is quite key for our kind of business. And we've been doing this much before AI became an everyday term, which is the predictive algorithms to figure out pre-Ramadan, post-Ramadan, end of summer, this impact on FMCG, this impact on steel and aluminum versus this impact on petrochemical. So all of those kind of things, are very much core part of our supply building, because that's how also, for example, we are not an open platform. Not anybody in the market can go and onboard themselves and start supplying a truck, because we don't sign any, minimum guarantees and things like that. Anybody can go into the system to onboard and access the load as long as their documentation passes through the KYB. But otherwise, and for us, that's why if it's a high or a low season, the ability to be able to see whether our supplies are adequately available to do that, especially when it's peaking. And then same in the trough, that's very much part of our forecasting, even our revenues, GP, and all of those things, and preparing for, these kind of seasonalities. However, because, we're a high growth company, we focus on month-on-month growth. So unlike traditional companies who are year-on-year growth. So, I think the digital market share of the total trucking business is less than 2% in the region. So we can continue to grow at 30%, 40% CAGR for 20 years.
Great. Great. No, thank you. Thank you. This behavior on digital trucking, one aspect that you mentioned that you have founded Moxie, which is not only as a fintech, not only internally addressing your fintech needs or fintech rails, but also now it is serving other clients also. So any aspect in terms of the embedded financial ecosystem that you're trying to build around credit, insurance, and payments already you're doing, and to your partners via API or some strategic partnership. Particularly, I'm focusing on two aspects: credit and insurance. Like, the customers need the credit part and making payment after a certain duration, and you are also supporting through your alliances with the banks or the NBFCs or any other lending organizations, and the insurance part also, which your clients may need as part of the products that they are sending through your trucks. So all those embedded services are also included in TruKKer, or if not, do you plan to?
So right now, both the working capital that is required to finance these transactions and the insurance protection of these transactions are part of the platform services. Moxie has been developed, when the first idea of Moxie was actually TruKKer Pay, because we tried multiple of the conventional banking products in prepaid cards and all of those kind of things, 2019, 2020, pre-corona. And they were not ideal, and like I said, we'd gone to creating our own cash centers. Uh, so the payment infrastructure is Moxie, and Moxie's entire limitation depends on the regulatory approvals. So Moxie is applied for multiple banking as a service license. That's because, to answer your question, the fintech embedding finance and logistics is actually core. So it's not only about paying somebody faster. There is all of these transactions are large transactions, and probably one of the three largest sectors, agriculture, construction, mobility. Mobility is not that much mainstream because people don't see, only when you're on highways or at a port when you see these mega trucks that are moving around. But you don't see that, and people's idea of mobility might be Amazon, general terms, right? But the amount of billions of dollars passed through this, industry, and the fragmentation makes it extremely hard for institutional banks or financial institutions to offer products. So to answer the next part of the question in terms of the opportunity for Moxie is significantly bigger than TruKKer, because most of these companies do not have traditional invoice discounting or supplier financing kind of products available to them. Most of the supply do not have asset financing, payday loans, business loans, none of these available. And why is that? Because the data or the credibility, that could be created based on data is not there. And we have that. We have that for 1,500 enterprise businesses, including the biggest FMCG global brands to a small workshop, that how has been their business. And trucking pretty much, for example, there are all these, let me not digress. Trucking has the visibility of a manufacturer or a trader's business health. We see raw material going in, we see finished products going out. If you're a trader, we see the same for you. And we have years of data. So Moxie's next thing is to get into lending and monetizing the lack of financial products in the business, which includes invoice discounting for our enterprise clients, and invoice discounting that passes the working capital cost from the platform to the supplier. And it should be doing in the same transparent way of having the ledger in place. And we have the huge advantage of having the payment infrastructure. So as any credit provider, you have your first right in terms of making a debit towards your payment that month or that week based on what kind of loans you're doing. And the same goes on insurance. We know exactly the quality standards of the driver, the past history of his driving on the network, the asset quality goes through constant checks in terms of health and safety requirements. So a lot of those things help us much more data ready to evaluate that risk from a cargo perspective or from a theft perspective. So the insure so right now it's a platform-wide insurance, but yes, Moxie is going to start monetizing these things and based on regulatory approvals. One of the big constraints to growth in fintech is the regulation. While it is extremely necessary because the sector is dealing with people's money, but at the same time, that also creates a lot of restriction. You wish you had a UPI kind of infrastructure everywhere like you have in India. That's not the case, in this part of the world yet.
No, got it. So, my question was like, of course, Moxie, you'll grow Moxie as a kind of credit organization or insurance, but presently you're leveraging any bank services to offer these invoice discounting or insurance or credit.
So we need a
So,
license to be able to be the originator for these kind of assets for a bank to then underwrite or a financial institution to then underwrite. So we are partnered with banks both in Saudi and UAE. In UAE,
okay,
so the bank provides us the infrastructure of the virtual accounts, but then to able to originate a lending opportunity, we need to have a certain license.
got it, got it. Oh, that is really helpful. So, see, before I move forward, I'll just ask all the participants. We have 35 plus participants. So, if you have any questions which you would like to ask from Gaurav, please put it in the chat box so that we can get those questions picked up so that this is not only my questions and all the questions we can pick it up. So looking forward to have questions from your side also. So, like one particular aspect, because trucking, there is one aspect on public-private infrastructure, like corridor plays pilots like NEOM signal a new kind of partnership between platforms and public infrastructure. Do you see that the the shaping of the future of cross-border logistics, perhaps even in South Asia? And are there any specific trade corridors or FTAs that you see as a catalyst? Because these corridors will help the truckers to transit from one country to another in a swift way. So do you see these act as a catalyst for future platform expansion?
I think more than having ventures which are based on public-private partnership, I think if I got a question right in terms of what is the
Correct.
uh, platform's ability of doing that, I think the commercial nature of public-private partnerships are probably not required because governments and regulators and customs and various authorities are all digitizing. And I think that particular pace of digitization is quite rapid in the GCC, especially Saudi Arabia and UAE. These governments are top down, digital focused, very much like India, right? So the opportunity in that partnership does not have to be in form of creating a commercial venture, but in terms of form of creating integrations where data can be, pushed and pulled based on compliance and based on optimizing. For example, right now trucks go through the borders and they have to first, have their documents checked. Once the documents are checked, then they get into a queue to get scanned, and then the customs and duty payment and blah blah, right? Now, if you look at that, all of those can be a humanless kind of a process where your entry barrier only opens when your documents are already approved and pre-checked. Now, for that, somebody has to push and pull data through an API or a bunch of API layers, right? Now, as a private company, to do such things, we are most qualified compared to a traditional transporter who probably would like ChatGPT to understand what is an API, right? So for us, those kind of partnerships are much more valuable, and we see that the sector and authorities and all of that are pro such things, where we can digitize information flow to cause, efficiency in operations. And when it's efficient, somebody is ending up saving money. Uh,
Right.
so those are, and in terms of commercial partnerships, like for example, the public-private partnership between TruKKer and RTA, which is the Road and Transport Authority in Dubai, an extremely progressive digital first kind of a authority, where we've taken over the scope of completely digitizing the home relocations business within Dubai. So we had a bit of emotional attachment to this product because when we shifted trucker from India to the region, we started the region with a home relocation business, and we did not go straight into B2B enterprise that we are in India. When it started, when the idea was created, we started in trucker in India first. We miserably failed, Pradeep and I, and then we moved to Dubai. But in that move, we moved first to the home relocations B2C business. Now, RTA has worked with us to create this partnership where Dubai as a city has more than 700, 800 households who are moving their home every day, just because the kind of nature of the transient economy that it is. So those kind of partnerships can come in play for various projects like NEOM. You mentioned NEOM, one of the largest construction projects in the world. I think those are very much possible. And, the commercial value out of those are mainly in consolidating procurement. So a digital platform like us, I think immediately starts saving anywhere between 10 to 12% as soon as a large enterprise, maybe you're a cement company or you're the largest steel company or any other high volume company. As soon as you consolidate all your procurement through one platform, you end up saving that much amount of money. Even though your procurement department is saying, oh, I'm going to get 4 tenders, 5 tenders, and I'm going to select the cheapest. Listen, you can't select the cheapest every day because you just don't have the bandwidth. You'll end up selecting the cheapest for the month, for the quarter. The platform does that constantly as its nature. So those are advantages that can be had for mega projects and things like that in PPP environment.
Right, right. So thank you so much. And I also see personally that that this public-private partnership and you have the capability to deliver the digital part of it will play a kind of transformative role if we do like in a projects like NEOM. Now, coming that you have been you have a fascinating kind of M&A journey and IPO buzz in the air, is in the air and everybody's going for IPO. Without getting into specifics, how do you think about the your firm's readiness at the scale, especially around the governance, data monetization, investor narratives, and overall readiness towards IPO? Or do you see it's a far away thing, not in the visibility or near visibility?
So listen, by the way, you have a few questions from folks in your
Yes.
questions. So on the IPO, to be honest, I came from AECOM, one of the largest consulting businesses in the world. We had to be compliant to Oxley and all of those things that I learned as a graduate engineer, in working in large firms. So we never had that challenge of trying to have the mindset of compliance. In fact, our seed round had IFC in it, and that came with a lot of documentation, both from a environmental sustainability perspective along with financial governance. So that has been built into our DNA right from the very beginning. So we now get audited by one of the big fours for the last 4 years. So we're not worried about the readiness of an IPO. I think our data stack, our compliance, reporting, audit, and all of those. TruKKer has an audit committee. It has all been there. An IPO is probably one of the most probable path towards offering liquidity to our investor shareholders, right? So that's been always in our mind, I think. So the readiness is not so much of a challenge or governance either.
Correct. No, this is good. So one question which has been asked by Jaya Talreja, that as this idea is new, maybe for Indian ecosystem involved, and it involves dealing with the truck drivers, how were you able to convince the truck drivers to use this platform? That enablement or the journey to convince them, because in urban area people use it, but how did you kind of convince them or make them aware?
So I think this answer has two parts, right? So one is the strategic answer and one is the execution answer. So strategically, I spent time when this idea came in end of 2015. I went on a truck from Porbandar to Delhi along with a ad hoc driver, right? So and that was purely to do one of the longest routes that I could do, from Gujarat, and to understand the life that these guys live and what is really value, not value, good to have, or necessary, and all of those things to persona the driver. I was a finance real estate guy. I never even went into industrial areas, So for me to get into trucking, we needed some strong learning curve. And I understood that these guys have, from a value perspective, cash is very important because they're constantly spending cash on food, diesel, toll. At that time, this was pre-GST time. So there used to be state crossings, and typically they would not be able to afford a room to rest. They would get a place where 20 rooms have one toilet. So those kind of things. So that was very important to understand the user persona. And then it was purely, driven by whether you have business and how okay, will you pay him immediately or not. And that remains even true today. So strategic answer that, hey, we need every time we get into a new product, new truck type, new lane, new country, from a supply acquisition, these are the two main very important things that we communicate. That, hey, listen, you have transparent access to demand. Whether you win the job or not win the job is very transparently communicated to you. If you're compliant, you qualify to bid, and if you have the lowest bid, you win. No, and once you bid, we define what are the payment terms of this transaction, so you get paid. So a lot of these things, they have in our thing. And then execution wise, man, earlier it was much more difficult. I have been into truck yards, having, I don't know, infinite amount of biryani with drivers, just to talk and tell them about this. But it all ended up being saying, boss, load hai ke nahi hai? In India, when we started in TruKKer, just as an anecdote, Pradeep and I distributed 3,000 plus Micromax phones, and TruKKer was all self-funded at that time. And we invested so much into saying, we thought, this is what we thought, that, oh, he's not going to bid because he does not have a smartphone. But that was BS. It is not that. He just didn't have the need, or he didn't see this to be a source of business. So, and then a lot of these smartphones were gone. They never came back. Drivers still did not bid, etc., etc. So primarily the execution has to be driven by, and that's why we don't go and onboard drivers like, go and onboard thousands of drivers. We have very defined database thing that, hey, let's go and focus on driver acquisition for this truck type, this lane, so that as soon as they're onboarded, they start seeing qualified loads, and they start experiencing. Now it is much more easier because there's a word of mouth, there's a certain amount of brand recognition, so onboarding is simpler. Especially even if you go to a new country, we find drivers who worked and they're aware of the brand in another country. If we go to a regional country which is connected by land freight.
Got it. Just one aspect, because in India, the payments journey, the one of the most important part which helped or which enabled people to adopt digital payments or UPI or QR code based payments was the trust, that building trust and towards the all digital payment apps. Now that journey is stabilized. People have trust in using the apps and the app based payments. In truckers journey, how did you kind of build the trust for the truck drivers to kind of helping them understand that transactions will not fail, you'll get paid on time, and you have to trust once. So how that journey actually worked, and do you see that that can further be scaled? Because I believe that still the penetration is, like you also said, the 2% is the penetration. So how to take it further? I think that is also asked by Anandini, that
Well, I think, see, the trust in anything which is, large enterprise to small enterprise comes in, walking the talk. We can't be saying that this is instant payment and not make it instant. So, and then if you look at UPI, I think there were some startups or sorry, they're not startups, they're mega corporations now. But, some of these guys, I think somebody created a bell that as soon as the vendor gets paid, there's a bell that rings to confirm that the money's come in. So I think the instant nature and the digital network, I think that's no more value add, because that is available. Moxie allows that as soon as I pay my peer payment, then when it deducts from me, instantly it reflects in their account. So those kind of infrastructure is available. So a lot of this trust is based on how you really perform as a business. You might have all the ability to pay somebody instantly, but if you don't you don't click the pay button, it's not going to happen. So TruKKer, before fintech and post fintech, we had that, like I said, the core value that a supplier gets from the platform is payment as per payment terms. So if a broker, if the platform promises them 15-day payments, the platform has that as a task list created, that these are the payments that must get processed today as a compliance requirement. Unlike other companies where they might be, hey, the payables team is motivated and incentivized to delay payments. Here, hey, listen, you don't pay on the system generated payment date. You must explain why not. So that's a very much a business mindset that drives the trust of your supplier. And getting paid is the least, like, paying salary is the least that a company can do for an employee. Paying the supplier on time as much as you promised to pay on time is the least that you can do as a business partner.
I totally understand because adhering to the payment terms and building trust in the initial phase is really critical towards the success and the adoption. Just one question which has been asked by Anandini that you have scaled up aggressively. We have seen incidents in India that people scale really fast, but the operational or the governance aspects are not well maintained. So how did you actually balance and both together? Because at sustained growth, it is required to be balanced. So any few or pointers that you'd like to share as a learning for other fellow startups which may be listening this?
Sure. So I think this is a difficult sector. When I was in real estate construction, I used to feel that, hey, that's a primitive, unsophisticated sector, the construction part of it. Trucking is even more primitive as a sector. So in terms of, scaling in this sector is extremely important, which is driven around being able to drive compliance through both sides of your users. You can have companies which are not legit or involved in illegit trade, or suppliers who are not legit, do not carry the right kind of paperwork or licensing and things like that. So that's one part which is hygiene. I won't bore the answer by talking about that. I think the true challenge of the industry is the lack of institutional financial investment in the sector. Like I said, there is the biggest trucking company in India is, I think, probably owns 10,000 trucks, or I don't know, maybe 15. But then India has almost 1 million trucks. Now look at that from any other sector perspective. The largest real estate developer versus the real estate segment, or the largest FMCG in the total. So that fragmentation has prevented financial institutions to get into the sector. That is probably the largest systemic constraint for a digital player to grow, because you are either running out of good quality assets, or you're running out of working capital to available demand. Because demand is pretty much, enterprise. It's 99% of our demand is enterprise, and enterprise demand comes with credit, process because of, the procurement and things like that that companies have. So the ability to finance and, which right now is all, it's not that trucks are not moving, they're all getting moved, but that's the constraint. Why a traditional company cannot grow like TruKKer? Because of two reasons. One is not having the capital to keep growing, and second is not having the technology to scale. They will end up, operating leverage will not be built at scale, and they might fail because of that. But these are the two reasons. One is the financial, constraint.
Got it. Got it. Just before I move forward, I wanted to understand, like, coming back to like your personal journey. See, you have been in the consulting in and structural engineer. So what are the kind of, as a founder's perspective, how your journey has been? Because many of uh, us try to start the journey, but what are the learnings that or unlearning that you would like to, or mistakes that you went through that evolved your kind of overall leadership? Because consultant and the entrepreneurs, there is a different mindset. So how did you transform yourself into that particular perspective and building a kind of multinational platform, TruKKer?
So, like I said before, I entered into this idea of an Uber of trucks, of building the digital freight network, accidentally, after 12 years in real estate, transaction advisory, and before that, at the start of my career as a structural engineer. I think the biggest mental shift was, moving from perceived traditional real estate development, and, sophisticated financial business, to, and also working in one of the largest consulting firms where I was probably at a very steep, career growth. I became the youngest director in a Fortune 50 consulting firm at 32. The next guy was a 45-year-old director. And from that to suddenly moving into even more primitive as a sector, which was trucking, where I had to, learn technology, getting bootstrapped, complete, reset of investment as an asset class. Trucking is still not an asset class. Multiple steps of downgrade that happened in terms of the surrounding colleagues that I would be working with, because of the bootstrap nature and the limitation on how smart people you can hire. I think all of that was a big, shift in like, going from first class to budget airline. So that was, something which I did not have that much of a challenge, because I think I'm a third generation businessman, and that was core. Building a business requires patience. Building a business bootstrapped is a good thing. I think I would still like to feel bootstrapped in my DNA for TruKKer, but I think what I could bring from my past life in the early life of TruKKer was the ability to deliver finite, execution-based projects. Because my past life was, hey, you've made this investment into this project, it needs to get delivered in this timeline for, return on investment to start flowing as cash by this time. So very much of that, real estate private equity kind of mindset that helped me to be very execution focused. I was a workaholic even before TruKKer, so I think that has not changed, and I hope to keep that way for a while. But I think these thing of being able to execute, I think that was a big ability. And then the other thing was, by nature, I like to solve, and I like to execute. And sometimes I have the wrong solution, and I execute the wrong solution. And most of the times I catch it before it becomes, a big mistake. But that's what I also tell my teams, other startups. And it sounds very cliche that, hey, don't worry about making a mistake. But it is very hard to do. It's very hard to have that mindset that, hey, listen, I need to take this decision right now, whether it is a product launch, whether it is a new lane launch, or whether it is investing into something or not investing, shutting something down, or pulling something back. I think a lot of times you are ideally most people, and when you become a medium-sized enterprise, you'll get advice. And that picking of advice needs to have a time thing. The worst thing you can do is not take a decision. So I feel in my mind, I'm very much numbers driven. I like to tell people that, hey, communication needs to only be based on numbers. And at the same time, I know exactly where to ignore the Excel sheet. Where you have a very strong gut, things, you feel things, then you can take the view of, okay, you know what, I'm going to ignore the Excel sheet for the first 3 months. And if my gut is not right in 3 months, then I'll reevaluate, and then I'll maybe do ignoring the Excel sheet another 3 months. But rarely, I've seen that you take a decision that, but at the same time, I do believe in Jeff Bezos, where he says that, you have certain decisions where you can't come back from, so, and I think at his level and at his size, maybe those are really big. But I'd like to believe that, hey, no decision is the worst thing you can do. You must be able to decide, and you must have the gray matter and the execution to then execute the right decision or execute the shutting down of a wrong decision.
That's great. And the best part that you have told is like you could able to transform yourself from consulting mindset and the to the entrepreneurial mindset. The factors that you told are like problem solving mindsets and being really hardworking and determined towards not kind of stopping or not kind of, so that helped in the initial phases of your career. And bootstrapped or non-bootstrapped, that is something that it's a choice. But in terms of the initial days of funding, so how did you manage the funds? It's like a family, or it's like a your own balance, or like to understand, because bootstrap is not sometimes a choice.
Yeah. So for me, for example, I've had a good privileged family to back me up in most things. And even before TruKKer, I did things which some went extremely well, some did not go so well, and I always had the ability to risk my money and also draw down on the bank of mom and dad. So I did the same for TruKKer. Bank of mom and dad and my own savings were funding TruKKer for the first 1.5 years until we raised the first, I think it was $100,000 that we secured. So I think the bigger shift for me was, when my dad asked me that, hey, what is this kind of a business that you're doing where you leave in the morning with $100 and you come back in the evening with less than $100? And I was like, man, that's right. And I hadn't done anything either as a consultant or my own, real estate continues to be one of my, performing sectors. But so I was like, hey, yeah, that's true. But, that's where the whole learning curve was extremely interesting and steep for me on the technology side, that, hey, you are paying for user acquisition and behavioral shift that requires investment towards putting the product first. And that's where I think even now, I think TruKKer makes its growth primarily on the service quality and the product's ability to process transactions. We don't market funds. So we never got into buying growth. I think one of the earlier questions was, hey, how do you balance, growth versus at the startup? I think it's criminal to think of investor money as right to burn. And those are some of the things I learned. And this was 2006, 17, end of 16, when I was actively raising for technology investment. And I realized that people like to hear, hey, where are you burning? And burn is a very common language. It's not, by the way, outside the technology ecosystem, nobody uses that terminology of burn.
Yes.
So that's a bit. So I never got influenced by that, and I think that was a good thing. And even now, so we are very measured. Even if whether we are investing $100,000 or $1,000,000 or $10,000 in a marketing campaign, it's very measured about exactly how much return it needs to show. If it's an experiment, it needs to be defined. So I think I feel that mindset could not catch up with me, and I think that was a great blessing for TruKKer. That we did invest, and we right now just about like minus 1 point something percent in our EBITDA, but from versus minus 18% 3 years ago. But even when that 18% was going, we were not like, oh, we have a 500 people tech team. We realized that technology was first to digitize our processes. The client really does not care. He still wants to email. The driver really does not care. He still wants to get notified by WhatsApp. So we were very measured what parts of technology investments that we were spending. And typically that is the kind of like, my CFO is a Goldman guy. I have a top quality management team, and at smaller scale, no transportation business could pay for such things or pay for a 100 people tech team. But at our scale, we are now paying those things. And those were the front investments that were required to be made. That's something that can create to a scale of 2,000 trucking transactions in a day versus the largest business in UAE might be doing that in 2 weeks. So I think that was different, and I think that from a commercial standpoint.
Correct. No, good that you had courage and the support both. So I think we have sharp 4 minutes left, and I would request anybody would like to kind of ask any question. We can open the mic, or you can type in the chat window or Q&A window. So I think there are some questions which are asked, and one aspect is that you already told that the trucking market is largely fragmented. And no, you told that no one organization owns more than 10,000 trucks as a group. So how did you plan to kind of navigate through such a highly unfragmented market? So that's one question which has been asked by participant Anandini Singh.
So on the fragmentation side, we are extremely small. We are tiny in, even as TruKKer, we are the largest broker in the market or the largest transportation operator. But we focus on the full truckload. So we do not do parcels, we do not do palletized cargo, and primarily we do the large trucks, the ones that you see around ports and, on the highways, pretty much, the 12 to 15 meter long trailers. So within the whole sector, we have focus on that. Within end markets, we only focus on industrial and high volume commodity, end markets. So we still don't do a lot of e-commerce. We still don't do a lot of retail, refrigerated cargo. But then these are all different from region to region. So to answer your question, every time we're entering into a new lane, that is driven by exactly what part of the FTL's, full truckload business are we going to, organize, and who are the main clients in this business, and is there a supply demand gap? Like, for example, if you look at trucks that have to do, dangerous cargo or pharmaceutical, these are very specialized trucks that have to have certain, asset quality and certain certifications, and they would not have an impact of an aggregator because the supply and demand is very rightly matched. Most of the clients would sign a 5-year contract for which the transporter will buy the trucks that are dedicated for those 5 years. So there's not much value add directly that a platform would add. So those kind of, things that we refine and go into specific lanes and truck types to acquire.
Got it. Got it. Hope, Anandani, we got your question answered. Just because we are at last couple of minutes, I would like to understand, like, this group that we are talking is a close group of fellow senior partners, directors, and other team members. So any area or any that you feel that is still like unsolved, or where you think that the consulting as a sector can support the companies like yours to solve certain challenges or problems that you're facing, and or support you in solving towards those, and any use cases or any areas that you feel that we can add value towards.
I think the data-based, promotion of this kind of a business solution to large enterprises, is one of the things that you guys can definitely support. I think some of these time that we're spending can result into, research documents, in the specific challenges that I've identified before, where the infrastructure remains to do transaction between large enterprise to small enterprise. But regulation prevents either a bank or a fintech to actually offer products. So highlighting such value-added infrastructure and service providers already in place, which can immediately start unlocking, value both for investors who are not addressing the asset class and the participants of the sector to access that investment towards modernization improvement. I think with central banks. So I think consultants like GT, Deloitte, McKinsey, BCG, blah, blah. So, if the consulting business can really do some data, because as a startup, when we go and acquire a large client, we go and pitch our services, and, we, based on how quickly we can open the right door in those businesses, we convert those clients because very clear definition of value add. But when it comes to regulators or, semi-government institutions that need to create policies and things, especially in our part of the world, I think we run out of gas because those require a lot of, follow-up and building of trust, because it's not going to end up being your client or your service provider. So I think consultants, who get hired by these, institutions to do other work, I think should hunt for scope where you can build that trust, being a consultant, a third party, and validating some of these things with regulators that can create, these monetization faster.
Got it. Got it. So right. So of course, in my personal capacity, we are working with a few startups, or rather scaled up startups, where like we have alliance where we build or integrate our consulting solutions with those, and also just building an opportunity for companies like yours towards our clients, which may be potential clients for you. So I think we are bang on time. And Gaurav, I think you have answered all the questions and kind of opened up really well and shared your journey. I really personally like your journey, the transformation journey that you have, and the way you have grown the business in such a sector where only 2% is digitized. So there is way to go in terms of the scale and the penetration towards this sector. So thank you so much, Gaurav, again, and look forward to further discussions with you on the areas that you have highlighted, and we can align on particular strategic roadmap or supporting you in the monetization or the database monetization part. So thank you so much, Gaurav, for joining and part of this.
Thank you, Dharmender. Thank you, Shantanak, and the GT team. It was a pleasure. Yeah.
Thank you.
so
Thank you,
much.
Gaurav.
Thank you.